some people log on. And we'll talk about a little bit about the school issue today in Branford. This is basically another all Branford podcast, although we'll talk about a little bit of national stuff as it applies to Branford. To those that are yesterday, I just want to say thank you to so many people. The last few days, so many new emails, new viewers, new comments. One of the most common comments is that people were under the impression that I was far right. And they've been watching now the last 3 or 4 days or what have you and realized that that was not true. And I love hearing that comment. I am very much a Democrat. And every Republican who knows me well knows this. If you have a discussion about Obama or military spending or progressive tax rates or healthcare, I lean extremely left on almost all of these issues. The fundamental reason Branford 7 was started 11 years ago, and I'll tell you the story. And the fundamental reason this podcast has started is because I simply don't believe and will not accept that we should be making local decisions based on national crap. It just doesn't make any sense. And, I have been in DTC meetings where I agree with everybody in the room. I agree with everybody in the room on abortion law, on military spending, on more progressive income tax rates, on so many things. But then it never really made sense that I'm supposed to agree with them on a public works issue or what roads get paved or building a senior center. Those issues are about facts and logic and intelligence and reason, not about ideology. And so it never made sense to me that I was supposed to vote and pick a party based on national issues and then use those to make local decisions. It made no sense. And I'll tell you this story, and good morning to everybody that's coming in. When I first moved to Branford, I joined the Democratic Town Committee. Some great people. I met Anthony Giardello, who was majority leader, met Chris Sullivan, who's still on the RTM now. Some really, really good people, and got involved and worked on Uncle Ross's campaign, who was the first selectman at the time. And I had worked on Obama's campaign. I'm still a major Obama supporter, and I've described that many times. I think he's one of the best presidents we've ever had, and will likely believe that for a long time. Then worked on, and that was in 2008, 2009, worked on a DeRoss campaign. And afterwards, the plan was 2 years later, I would run and be on the RTM. That was the plan. Alice Lambert was an RTM member at the time. She had said to me, I want you to replace me. We had, that was the plan. And I think I would have been a pretty good elected official. But as I covered more meetings and went to more meetings, the third selectman at the time, the person Uncle Ross defeated that year, his name was John Opie. He still lives in Stony Creek. And I didn't know who he was during the election. Afterwards, I got to watch him in meetings, got to know him a little bit. But as we talked in local meetings about local issues, the guy that I was running against and campaigning against and not treating well during the campaign, I'm listening to him and I'm saying to myself, this guy is a logical, intelligent, educated person. And in fact, he made more sense than Uncle Ross did on many of his arguments. And it's hit me sitting in one of those meetings that it doesn't make sense to me that I'm supposed to be against him because he's a Republican simply because I'm a Democrat. That made no sense. And to this day, he's one of the smartest people I know. He knows town issues. He's quiet. He wasn't a great politician, but a very good guy. He led the town through a very difficult time with the sewer issues. Was first selectman for a few years. And he played a great role as the third selectman or on the board of selectmen as the minority representation on the board. And so sitting in that room, it just irked me to say, I don't want to join a cult. I don't want to join a group of people that tell me I have to think and act and vote a certain way because I agree with them on national issues. Most people who register as a Democrat or Republican do so at a young age, really based on social issues. As you get older, issues change. Then when we get to local issues, where a senior center goes, what school gets built is not based on ideology. And so if you're coming to Branford 7 and looking at an editorial and saying, you pick sides, listen, I look at local issues as local issues. I don't give a damn if they're Republican or Democrat. I'm a Democrat. If you want to talk issues on national matters and you watch this podcast, you know that. I could talk circles around it all day long. I research it. I'm passionate about what I'm passionate about. But when it comes to local matters, facts matter more than ideology. Reason matters more than anything else. How taxes are raised, where the money comes from, is significantly different than any other level of government. And so picking a side based on political party makes no sense. Makes none. So if you see an op-ed supporting a Republican, it's because the issues support that Republican. If you see an op-ed supporting a Democrat, it's because the issues support that Democrat on that matter. The last election, I endorsed Biden, Sean Scanlon, Christine Cohen, and Robin Comey. All 4 Democrats. And so yesterday, we saw the filing from Tom Brockett, the Democrat running for first selectman in Branford, running against Jamie Cosgrove. Now, I'm going to make this statement. I'm going to explain why I believe it, and I'm going to go through some recent events that explain this. I do not find Tom Brockett to be an honest man. In watching him on the RTM and seeing his statements, I have not seen honesty, sincerity, reason, or logic. I see politics. The problem running in Branford now is that you're running against Jamie Cosgrove, who is a registered Republican, a lifelong Democrat from a lifelong Democratic family, who reality is doesn't give a shit about politics, doesn't care about national politics. Want to talk about local issues? He'll talk to you about all day long. Doesn't care about the national stuff. This is his town. His kids go to school here. His wife is a teacher here. He's a townie, and he cares about Branford. So when we have one party pushing national crap and dishonesty and lack of logic and lack of reason, and then we have Cosgrove, who doesn't care about that crap, is focused on Branford, it's really hard for any reasonable person to say, you know what, I want to go with the hyper-partisan person on this side. Now, will there be people that do that? Yes. There are a couple thousand people on each side that will vote party line. But that's the difference here. And we're seeing that very quickly. Before we even knew he was running, a letter was in the Sound. And it was from Tom Brockett and Tracy Everson. Now, Tracy Everson is not the most informed RTM member I've ever seen. Really not the most informed. I mean, just crazy, crazy statements. I watch her on the RTM videos, and that's not true. That's not true. The things are just crazy. But the letter trashes a property, and it's the Atlantic Wharf property in the center of town. Everybody knows the previous brick building was there. It was taken down. There was an approval done for a large development. It went to court. In the lawsuit, there was a line in there that some chemical may have been on some bricks that wasn't properly disposed of. That was in the lawsuit. Lawsuits are inherently biased, obviously. Once that happened, Wayne Cook, who's the guy who used to drive around in town with the horns and put signs all over town, and that guy, started a petition, got some people up saying, oh my God, contamination, oh my God, the town's inept, and blah, 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 blah. It was part of his shtick. And Tracy Everson jumped on it, thinking it was going to help them in an election against Jamie Cosgrove. Jamie Cosgrove has no say. He can't go on a property and test the property. That's not what he does. You go to DEP at the state to do that. In any event, they wanted to use it as an attack. So they write this letter now saying the town has done no testing and they have no results and there's nothing on this property. Tom Brockett's a retired attorney. He wrote a letter to the Sound with another RTM member publicly slandering a private property owner. By the way, that private property owner is Kevin O'Neill, who owns a lot of property in Branford. He's well known in Branford. That property is going to be a centerpiece of Branford when developed. And in their letter, they admitted they had no testing to support anything they were saying. To believe for a second that somebody running for office, holding office, by the way, he's the minority leader on the RTM, and running for higher office, should be writing a letter slandering a private property owner with no evidence is disgusting. And here's what it actually does. It puts 28,000 people at legal risk. And if you're wondering, do we have precedent for this? We do. We have a history in Branford of first selectmen and elected officials attacking private property owners and resulting in significant lawsuits. Unc DeRoss went after Wayne Cook over his taxes on his property. $700,000 was paid to Wayne Cook because Unctor Ross, literally, not a joke, put in writing that the tax board should change their decision on his property. He had no right to do that. It is absurd. When we were talking about locations for public works not going at Tabor, Andy Campbell, then a candidate for office, went around saying there was contamination on one of the properties, literally slandering a property that was for sale at the time, and lawsuits were threatened there. Do I support Jamie Cosgrove? I do. The same reason I support Sean Scanlon. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. It has nothing to do with their ideology. It has everything to do with this. They're honest. There are things Jamie Cosgrove's done I disagree with. I did not agree with that Blackstone Library project. That project made no sense, especially at that cost. They could have solved the problems they wanted to solve for $2 million, not $5 million. I disagree with Sean Scanlon on his marijuana stance, on a few other bills that he's put forward, and we've had those discussions. I've had him on the podcast. We've talked about those. Agreeing with him or disagreeing with him on a bill or ideology on a stance isn't why I support any of these people. I support them because when you find an honest politician, someone who doesn't bullshit you, you keep them. You don't play the game. You know, we all talk about change. We need to change our system, and our politics are corrupt, and our politics are terrible, and we have to be passionate about change. At the same time, we have to be passionate about keeping good people in office. There's a reason I endorse Sean Scanlon. The last election, there's a reason I endorsed Robin Comey, because the alternative was awful. Terrible option in that race. Robin's fine enough. At the end of the day, you go with people who are going to be honest and straightforward. And we have a clear difference now. I'll give you an example of just how this push to use now national politics and local. The head of the Democratic Town Committee now is a kid named Kevin Coughlin. He just recently moved to Branford and almost immediately became head of the Democratic Town Committee. He is in the press office for the Senate Democrats in Hartford. He's a career politician. He's a political operative. When we say political operative, as opposed to someone like Jamie Cosgrove, this person is trying to get ahead politically and in a career by pushing politics, right? That's their career. They go to school for politics. They work in politics. Their job is to push the party and thus their career. You know, as much as I think Sean Scanlon's honest, he has used that seat to get another job with the airport. There's no question about that. It happens. That's a career path. Kevin Coughlin now can make a huge name for himself if he comes to Branford and knocks off Jamie Cosgrove and helps the Democrats. He doesn't give a shit about Branford. He doesn't know Branford history. He doesn't know what Jamie Cosgrove cleaned up when he took in office. Didn't know the mess he inherited when he took office 6-8 years ago, whatever it was. He doesn't know all the issues that Democrats caused before, the lawsuits and the nonsense that happened before. He just wants to win a race. And so last month, the Democrats put forth on the RTM a resolution basically saying we acknowledge that there was an attack on January 6th and this was awful and terrible and whatever. And it comes up in the RTM meeting. Now, Democrats put it all over their social media pages before the RTM meeting, and it comes up and they vote on this resolution. The Republicans can go, no, we're not going to vote on national crap on a local level. I completely support that. National shit should stay there. I didn't elect any RTM member to worry about Washington, D.C. Period. I elected RTM members to worry about local school systems, local public works, our local police, our local fire departments. But as soon as that happened, Kevin Coughlin, now the head of the DTC, writes a letter to the Register saying this how awful this was, and Republicans are denying facts, and remember this in November. You should vote on a local election based on a national matter? The Democrats are pushing national politics for one reason. They can't win on local. What are they going to win on? Democrats, when they were in office and had all branches of government, controlled the RTM, controlled the Board of Finance, and the Board of Selectmen. No senior center ever got done. No school was getting done. The taxes were going up. There was nowhere near what we're seeing on environmental causes in the last 6 years under Cosgrove. Cosgrove gets in office, what happens? We end the Tabor disaster and the legal fees that came with that. We ended a bunch of lawsuits. We protected Foot Park. It's now a town park. Solar farms, trails on the Tabor property, Chet's Pond, Labyrinth over there. There's a huge expansion of open space. We have more green committees and green energy committees than ever before. Huge townwide initiatives and a huge plan that Democrats opposed to get cleaner energy in town buildings. The senior center, which never got done, is now done, combined with the community house, which means we will have one less building to manage in the future. And Walsh Intermediate School, which was a problem for decades, the parents complained for decades, was finally done. You know what the mill rate did last year? It went down. If you're looking for how environmentally friendly this administration has been, ask Christine Cohen, because Christine Cohen, a Democrat state senator who represents us, had to go to Hartford to help Branford initiate the first law in Connecticut to set up an environmental fund for a town. Not only is this town greener than any other town, we're setting the standard. So if you're a Democrat in Branford, you're voting for Cosgrove. If you're a cult member in Branford, then vote for your party. But if you believe in something, if you believe in an ideology, and if you believe in taking care of our town, we have to just as actively reject the bullshit that we're seeing from this DTC, from this Democratic Party. There's a lot of Democrats that are qualified to run for first selectman. Most of them realize the town is doing well and don't want to. They don't want to run against Jamie Cosgrove. They may run, you may have 20 people run. When Jamie decides he's not running again, you may have 20 people run. That will be very, very qualified. It goes even further. In this case, the Democrats used the resolution and tried to use it politically. But Tom Brockett did this before. At the end of last year, in October and November, he put forth a resolution in favor of Black Lives Matter. Now, I support Black Lives Matter. I support what they're trying to do. I support equality. Everybody does. Do I believe in systemic racism? I do. Do I believe in it to the extent that it's being pushed at times? Not so much. But do I believe it exists? Absolutely. And there are things we can do on a national and especially state level to combat that. That said, that resolution went to the RTM and then miraculously disappeared after a podcast I did. Why? Because it was basically a big fuck you to the police department. The police went and supported Black Lives Matter. They marched, they gave them access to the roads. They went down the street with them. They made sure they were safe while looking at signs that said, fuck the police. And the guy who wants to be first selectman put forth a resolution to support that group in Branford. Do I support the cause? Yeah. And I supported it a lot more before they came up with defund the police. Because I support the police, because I support Black Lives Matter. The police keep millions of people safe and 28,000 people in Branford safe. That Brockett even put that forward was ridiculous. But soon after that podcast, it disappeared. He realized it wasn't helpful politically. What does this mean for you? Why am I saying this? Because this site started as something of an experiment. It is easy in media to pick a side left or right. There is serious money in going left or right. If I just spewed right conservative stuff, if I just spewed left stuff, I would make 10 times the money I'm making now in donations and subscriptions, because people in general will pay for things they want to hear. This experiment is about, can we succeed taking a balanced, reasonable, logical look at issues? It doesn't mean I'm always right. But to those that are regular viewers, and I expect if you're new, you should talk to them, we look at things objectively as issues. And more often than not, I present both sides of an issue. That's why Branford 7 was started, and that's actually picked up significantly since the podcast started. What happened with Branford 7 was everybody knew the name, the Steve Mazzacane name, but they didn't know who I was. And so it was easy for people who didn't like an article to just trash me. He's far right, he's crazy, he's whatever. Well, now you get to see people get to see me on camera. And I do this live on purpose. You can ask questions in real time. We can have a conversation in real time. It's as transparent as it gets. So if there's a question of me, you can email, you can post it, you can send it in, we can have that conversation. Nothing's hidden. And so now I get all these emails saying, I was always under the impression you were far right. Who is this person, Stephen King, posting this stuff? I'll block that pretty soon. I don't know what's going on. And at the end of the day, I am a former DTC member. I am a registered Democrat. I was a massive Obama supporter. I voted for Biden and endorsed him last time for very significant reasons. I believe in certain things. I believe in a more progressive tax rate on an income tax level. Do I believe that same mentality exists for property tax? No. They're drastically different funding sources. I believe in being environmentally clean and pushing clean energy on a national level. Do I think we should eliminate oil? No. There's got to be a balance. You can never get rid of everything. You know, it's funny. There are so many people who follow politics, but don't understand economics. What I'm trying to do is mix the two. If you can understand the impacts of policy and how people's lives are truly impacted, then we could talk about the impacts of a stimulus package, the impacts of property tax, or the difference between property tax and the progressive income tax rate. Significantly different. But at the end of the day, the national crap, leave it there. Leave it in Washington. Elect people locally who care about local. If Tom Brockett wants to yell about Black Lives Matter and yell about national stuff, and the party wants to yell about all that crap, knock yourself out. Go run for Congress. But leave that shit out of the town. And not just Branford, but all of our towns. Leave it out of New Haven and Guilford and Madison, and run those towns based on the needs of those towns. Because when we start not caring and just pick a party line, are we even engaged citizens at that point? Or are we just cult members? You know, as I see these letters from an elected Tom Brockett and an elected Tracy Everson, two Democrats running for higher office, trashing a property owner in town with zero evidence, let's hope the whole town realizes the shit that's trying to be pulled. You have a town that is an amazing town. It is amazing. It is, in many ways, looked at throughout the state. We have money on hand. We can weather almost any potential issue. The mill rate is in check. Major infrastructure things like schools and senior centers are done that were held up for years. Don't let that go. Don't let people come in here who have political goals and aspirations way beyond Branford and try to push the national shit on a local level. That's why Branford 7 exists. Most people, the biggest economic impact you're ever going to have is on your house. Your retirement's built on local issues. Pay attention. Don't get distracted. You can be an active Democrat and be an active Republican on national issues. On local stuff, don't be blinded by bullshit. Vote on issues that matter locally. You have an administration now, a bipartisan administration, by the way. The Democratic chair of the Board of Finance, Democrat, Joe Mooney. The Board of Finance, Jamie Cosgrove. The Republicans on the RTM in lockstep for the most part. And then you have a group of people led by Brockett who want to make it as ugly and national as they can. Don't give in. And so I also want to talk about a little bit about what we're seeing with the Board of Education. I've talked to a few Board of Ed members over the last couple of days. And I know parents are getting fired up and they sent a letter to the state and all this is good. This is good activism. But just a few words of caution. Don't let the activists take over. For the most part, the people who are running this and the parents are people who are not typically involved. They got involved on this issue. They're focused on this issue. But looking at social media, looking at hearing from some of the Board of Ed members, the activists are the people who are at every meeting. They're at every single meeting yelling about something, lack of transparency or lack of this, or we hate John Prince, or we hate Hamlet Hernandez. Don't let that become your message. Those people, the people who start social media pages fighting the system, or the people who, I'm not talking about the organizers of this group. This group seems to be legit and sincere and genuine and have done their homework. And I agree with the cause. But don't let the crazies take over. We've watched the local Democratic Party be taken over by crazies. Don't let it happen to a good cause. Now, tomorrow night, I still laugh every time I read that agenda item. That's just word bullshit salad. We get that. But John Prinz had a terrible performance last Wednesday. Let's see what happens tomorrow night. Let's see if there's an improvement tomorrow night. The Hamlet had a disaster of a meeting last Wednesday. Let's see what happens tomorrow night. We know there's only one outcome most parents will accept. Right? That's it. Just to get open school. That's the outcome that should happen. I have made clear, and I hope if I was giving advice, my advice is to stay on topic. Don't let it become a bashing session on Hamlet. That's advice I'd give on anybody with any cause. If you get distracted with emotional pleas and other crap, or let other people hijack your movement, you're not going to get it done. You know, it's hard to say, Hamlet, we want you to reopen. Oh, and by the way, here's 20 speakers bashing you. That's never going to work. There's no ego. Never mind somebody like Hamlet, somebody who is very humble would have a hard time doing that. Second, focus on the Board of Ed. Those are the people, I don't care, and there's conversations about who handles the agenda and who does the minutes and who's in charge. The Board of Ed hires the administration. The Board of Ed hires the superintendent. When you get up and speak to the Board of Ed. And let them know the questions you want them to ask. Where is the plan? This doesn't seem like a crazy thing anymore. When we're watching so many other towns, the best thing parents have done, I suggest you do this again, keep posting the letters from other school districts. I saw one from Madison, I saw one from Amity, or from whatever, or from whatever it is, from Guilford. Keep posting the letters from other school districts. It is the most effective thing you can do, because it looks so stupid that we're not reopened. It just does. Every single town around us reopening. The Milford letter was spectacular. Those 5 legs was spectacular. Keep posting those. Those make the point better than any person can. And tomorrow night, go into the meeting with an open mind. Let's see what John Prinz has to say. Let's see what Hamlet has to say. There should only be one acceptable outcome. At this point, it makes no sense to stay closed. And keep posting those other schools that are open. I think, based on the people I have spoken to, the Board of Ed is behind you. I think you have the 2/3 you need to get something done. I think 6 or whatever. Remember, Hamlet alone has a decision to make. The state gave him that authority to reopen school. I want a definitive answer from him. That's what I want. And by the way, I don't know who this person commenting is, but either stop or I'm just going to block you. I don't know why you keep doing that. But tomorrow night, give John Prinz an opportunity. Let's see what he has to say. I certainly think he'll do a better job allowing Board of Ed members to ask questions. That should never have been stopped. Keep posting all of those plans from other towns, making that clear. And then tomorrow night, we'll see what happens. I try to go into those things saying, if I was Hamlet Hernandez and I have just watched all of this, now I know his ego. We understand that. But if, so on Facebook, these aren't popping up? All right, thank you, Lorena. I appreciate that. Or remember, I have Facebook, and then there's also the Steve Mazzacane podcast. He may be posting somewhere else. I'll have to get rid of him. In any event, if you were Hamlet and you went from last week, which was a disaster, in every way, shape, or form was a disaster. They went into that meeting thinking, we're going to have East Shore Health, and the parents are going to be like, oh, I finally get it. I understand. And that didn't happen at all. And you went through this week, and you just have over and over again these other schools that are open, these letters, these conversations, and I would avoid the nasty conversations. Just stay on point. Wouldn't you have to say, all right, listen, let's just open? We've told you point blank, and you should make this clear if you speak tomorrow night. We will not hold you accountable if there's an uptick in positive cases. We know it's about safety. But we will not hold you. We're not looking at you and saying, oh my God, you opened up and see we got an increase. We're not going to do that. Promise that's not going to happen. We want to reopen. We are willing to take the risks. We understand there are risks. Other school districts are taking the risks. We understand those risks when we also compare them to the emotional and educational and social risks that our kids are dealing with right now. Your attack or your approach is of working together. That's what's happened with the Board of Ed. All the members, especially Prins and Hamlet, and now the public, are going into these meetings with a wall up. They're expecting a battle. That shouldn't be the case. That tenor has to change. It should be we're going into this to have a conversation. That's on Hamlet. That may be on Prins. But tomorrow night, my suggestion, just based on talking to some members in the last few days, give them a chance. I think you might have a better, I'm not sure they're going to say reopen. I'm not sure about that. But I think you may have a better tenor and response than we have had in the past. Just some of these comments. Board is united and community united. I actually agree with you. I don't know. I didn't talk to every member of the board. I think there are at least 6 that are completely on board with reopening, that want to reopen. The question is, they don't have that call. The question is, will they hold Hamlet accountable if it doesn't happen? And that's a whole nother question. Don't look at Hamlet, peeps. We are better than him. Yeah, I don't know about that comment. Listen, Hamlet's a different style. I've called him out on some things that I think are a little crazy. But at the end of the day, he's still the superintendent, and you have a goal that you're trying to get, and he's still going to be the superintendent, whether you get that goal or not. So you're better off working with him than against him. Jennifer, surrounding town plans, Guilford, East Haven, North Branford, all plans were attached. I think that's valuable. Milford was big. I saw one from Amity. Other towns opening is significant. Unfortunately, I have a lot of spam comments in my feed. I apologize for that. But I think we got local politics influences our lives more than any other level of government. One person makes a difference. And that's absolutely true. For most people, their biggest financial investment isn't anything federal or state. It's your home. And the first selectmen, local elected officials, have a bigger impact on the property values of your home. So what has this administration done to increase your property values? One, we are probably the most environmentally friendly town in the state. What does that mean? That means trails and open space. That's valuable. That adds to property values. One of the biggest issues that real estate agents always said, Walsh Intermediate School, there were no walls. We fixed that. For seniors who were dying for a senior center, they love that new building. Not able to use it as much during the pandemic, but they love that new building. So you have massive things that have helped property values, increased property and our quality of life in our town, and done so and compare our mill rate to Guilford and to Madison, to other towns, by keeping the mill rate down. Branford is a great place to live. And you're seeing houses, part of this pandemic, go for 20, 30, 40% more than they ever did before. You can't argue with the results of what's happened over the last 6 to 8 years. And by the way, those projects were in limbo forever. Parents complained about Walsh forever. And we're going a step further with that. If Atlantic Wharf ever gets done, a huge eyesore will be taken care of. There's going to be development over by the train station, which are going to be high-end condos, which means not a lot of kids. Not a lot of kids is actually significant because you bring in tax revenue without having a lot of costs go out. You're not adding to the school system. So you have higher end development where Days Inn was. That's going to be high-end rentals. You have high-end condos going where across from the train station. You have another development that's over by the marina that's going to be happening as well. So you have, and Atlantic Wharf, if that does happen. These are all higher end units that are not designed to be with children. You're going to have professionals near the train station or near the highway that bring in tax revenue, bring in property tax revenue without adding to the school system. In the meantime, redid our schools, added a senior center community house, added open space. Foot Park is now a town property, solar panels, new trails, new open space acquisition. All of these things happening increases the economic value of the town, increases your property values, and it's an amazing place to live. Do not fall for the shit that the head of the DTC and Tom Brockett are spewing. Don't fall for it. It's bullshit. Don't fall for taking local issues and making them national. It's bullshit. It's acting in your own worst interests. It doesn't help the town. And just remember that as we move forward. Guys, thanks. It was a good podcast today. Thank you for all the comments. Whoever is spamming either me or the Facebook pages, I'll get rid of. And that being said, I'll be back tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And then hopefully on Thursday as well at 4 o'clock as we talk about the Board of Ed meeting that we're looking forward to on Wednesday night. Thank you for all the great emails and comments. If there's any suggestions or things you'd like to see me talk about or things I can do better, please let me know. And I appreciate all the support. Guys, I hope you all have a great night.